Precious stood at the edge of the Agba evil forest, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The dark trees loomed ominously before her, and somewhere deep within, Elizabeth and Dyke were preparing to break Agatha's powerful enchantment over King David using the mystical eggs. Precious knew she couldn't let that happen. The enchantment was more than just a spell. It was the source of her influence, the foundation of her power. If Elizabeth and Dyke succeeded, everything she had fought for would be lost. Her position, her control, all of it would crumble, leaving her vulnerable. The thought of being powerless sent a shiver down her spine. She took a deep breath, steeling herself as she moved silently through the forest, each step bringing her closer to the ritual site. As she approached the clearing, the faint glow of the mystical eggs illuminated the scene before her. Elizabeth and Dyke stood by the altar, their faces set with determination, unaware of Precious's presence. The enchantment was weakening, and Precious knew there wasn't much time left. Her mind raced. She couldn't rely on her usual tactics of manipulation or deceit. This was a battle of magic, and if she didn't act quickly, she would lose everything. She burst into the clearing, her voice trembling with both anger and desperation. "Stop. You don't know what you're doing," she shouted, her gaze fixed on Elizabeth. But Elizabeth was calm, almost amused by Precious' arrival. "You're too late," she said coldly, her voice laced with confidence. "The spell will be broken, and your power will be gone." Precious could feel the weight of those words crushing down on her. She pleaded, her voice cracking as she warned them of the dangers they didn't understand. If Agatha's enchantment was broken, it wouldn't just free the king, it would unleash something far darker, something that could consume them all. Her words fell on deaf ears as the mystical eggs began to glow brighter, signaling the spell's impending release. With her heart racing, Precious made one final, desperate plea, her voice full of fear and defiance. "Please, don't do this." She could feel her world slipping away, and as the power of the enchantment began to unravel, she realized that she might have already lost. Farooq stood quietly in the shadow of the towering trees, his mind racing with uncertainty. His loyalty to Precious was unquestionable. He had followed her through countless battles, standing by her side even when others had faltered. Yet, as they ventured deeper into the enchanted forest, a creeping sense of doubt gnawed at him. Precious was leading them on a dangerous path, one that involved strange and unpredictable forces. The thought of Agatha, the powerful sorceress, now aligned with Precious, sent a chill through him. He didn't trust her, not fully. Agatha was a mystery, her motives hidden behind an aura of ancient magic, and Farooq feared that she had her own agenda, one that could threaten them all. Farooq's thoughts wandered back to the uneasy conversations he had overheard between Precious and Agatha. Every word from the sorceress felt like it carried a hidden weight, a secret that only she knew. Was she truly helping them, or was she using Precious for her own dark purposes? Farooq couldn't shake the feeling that the alliances Precious had formed were built on fragile ground, and that any wrong move could lead to disaster. As the thick mist of the forest wrapped around them, Farooq felt the danger more intensely than ever. He knew they were walking into something far greater than they could control, and he wondered if Precious, blinded by her ambition, could see the risks. His loyalty to her kept him moving forward, but the doubts clouding his mind were growing louder. Farooq wasn't sure how much longer he could stay silent, watching as Precious placed their fates in the hands of someone as dangerous as Agatha. Every step deeper into the forest felt like a step closer to the unknown, and Farooq knew that soon he would have to confront Precious with his fears, or risk losing everything to forces they couldn't understand. In the dimly lit chamber, Precious stood by the window, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon where the palace towered above the city. Her face was a mask of cold determination, her mind calculating every move with ruthless precision. There was no room for mercy, no place for reconciliation. Elizabeth and Dyke were obstacles, nothing more standing between her and the throne that was rightfully hers. Precious had always known that power wasn't given, it was taken, and she was ready to do whatever it took, even if it meant spilling the blood of those who once stood beside her. The thought of betrayal didn't weigh on her conscience. In her mind, the path to greatness was paved with difficult choices, and those too weak to make them were doomed to fall. Precious dismissed any notion of loyalty or sentiment. Such things were for the foolish. She knew that Elizabeth and Dyke would never step aside willingly, and if they dared to challenge her claim, they would be dealt with swiftly and without remorse. Precious had already set her plans in motion, her allies carefully chosen, each one loyal to her ambition. As she turned from the window, a glint of steel flashed in her eyes. There was no turning back now. The throne would be hers, and she would ensure that no one, neither Elizabeth nor Dyke, would live to tell the tale. In Precious' mind, power was not just her birthright, it was her destiny, and she would seize it no matter the cost. As they approached the shadowy edges of the Agba evil forest, a cold, eerie wind whispered through the twisted trees, filling the air with an unsettling silence. The dense fog curled at their feet like ghostly fingers, and the faint sound of distant chants echoed, heightening the sense of dread that hung over them. Farooq slowed his pace, glancing around uneasily, every instinct screaming that this was no ordinary forest. The legend spoke of enchantments woven into the very roots of the trees, ancient spirits guarding the paths, and a price to be paid for anyone foolish enough to enter without reverence. Precious, Farooq's voice was low, his unease evident, the forest. It's not safe. There are forces here that don't allow passage without taking something in return. Precious, walking ahead with a bold stride, didn't even turn to look at him. Her expression remained unchanged, cold and dismissive. Superstition, she muttered, her voice sharp with overconfidence. No forest will stop me. Not now, not ever. Farooq's chest tightened as he stared into the dark abyss ahead. He knew the danger wasn't just some old wives' tale. There was something alive in the forest, something watching them, waiting. But Precious, driven by her ruthless ambition, was blind to it, her hunger for power clouding her judgment. To her, the forest was just another obstacle, a mere inconvenience on her path to the throne. Farooq could only hope that her arrogance wouldn't cost them more than they were willing to pay. Elizabeth stood before Dyke, her expression tense yet resolute, the weight of her confession heavy in the air. I'm a descendant of the Apama lineage, she said, her voice steady, but tinged with the burden of truth. Dyke froze, the shock unmistakable in his eyes. The Apama. The very name echoed in his mind like a haunting memory, the ancient enemies of his people, known for their dark magic and ruthless power. He stepped back, his fists tightening in confusion and disbelief. How can that be? He muttered, the words barely escaping his lips. The Apama were our sworn enemies, Elizabeth. Their magic, it's tainted. Elizabeth took a deep breath, knowing the battle she was about to face wasn't just against external forces, but against Dyke's long-held beliefs. Not all Apama are what the stories say, she explained, her eyes pleading for understanding. I've spent my life using my powers for good. You know me, Dyke. I'm not my ancestors. I fight against the darkness, not for it. Dyke's brow furrowed as the conflict within him raged. He had trusted Elizabeth with his life, but this revelation felt like a betrayal wrapped in uncertainty. Yet, as he looked into her eyes, he could see the sincerity, the determination to do what was right. It wasn't about bloodlines, he realized it was about choices. But could he truly trust someone whose lineage was rooted in the very power that had once tried to destroy everything he held dear? The forest around them seemed to quiet, as if even the spirits awaited his answer. In the dim glow of the enchanted forest, Precious stood side by side with Agatha, the powerful sorceress whose presence both reassured and unsettled those around her. Precious had aligned herself with Agatha out of necessity, drawn to her immense power and the promises she made. But Farooq, standing slightly apart, watched with wary eyes, his doubts growing stronger with each passing moment. "Are you sure we can trust her?" Farooq whispered to Precious, his voice filled with concern. "Agatha's power is undeniable, but I can't shake the feeling that she has her own agenda. What if she's using you?" Precious shot him a sharp glance, her voice cold and dismissive. "I know what I'm doing, Farooq. Agatha is our only chance to break the enchantment and take back what's rightfully mine. I need her." Farooq hesitated, looking at Agatha, whose expression remained unreadable, her motives shrouded in mystery. He couldn't deny that they needed her strength, but something about her felt too convenient, too dangerous. He had seen the way Agatha's eyes flickered with ambition when she thought no one was watching. She wasn't just an ally, she was a force that could just as easily turn on them. "I just hope you realize," Farooq added quietly, "if she's playing a game, we might not know until it's too late." Precious smirked, her confidence unshaken. "Then we'll make sure it's our game, not hers." But even as she spoke, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind, a thought she quickly buried. For now, Agatha's power was hers to command, but Farooq's warning lingered in the air like an unspoken threat. In the heart of the royal chambers, tension hung thick in the air as Precious paced back and forth, her eyes burning with ambition. The throne, looming before her, was within reach. Just one final obstacle stood in her way: Elizabeth and Dyke. They were determined to restore King David's fractured mind and prevent her from claiming the power she had long sought. But Precious had come too far to be stopped now. "They think they can save him," Precious sneered, her voice dripping with disdain as she addressed Agatha, who stood quietly in the shadows. "But they don't realize the kingdom needs a ruler who understands strength, not sentiment." Agatha nodded, her expression unreadable as always, though her eyes flickered with a dangerous spark. "They're fools to think that sentiment will hold a kingdom together. But remember, Precious, once you take that throne, there will be no turning back." Meanwhile, in the depths of the palace, Elizabeth and Dyke prepared for their final stand. Elizabeth's heart pounded as she looked at Dyke, her resolve hardening. "We have to restore King David's mind, Dyke. If we don't, Precious will destroy everything he built, and with Agatha at her side, there's no telling how far she'll go." Dyke clenched his fists, the weight of their task pressing heavily on him. "I know. But we're not just fighting for the king, we're fighting for the soul of this kingdom. Precious and Agatha only care about power, and if they win, it'll be the end of everything we know." The battle for the throne wasn't just a political struggle, it was a war for the future of the kingdom. Precious, ruthless and unwavering, saw the throne as her destiny. Elizabeth and Dyke, on the other hand, fought not for personal gain, but for the restoration of justice, for the king and for the people. Two sides, one throne, and the fate of the kingdom hanging in the balance. The final clash was imminent, and only one could emerge victorious. In the dim glow of the enchanted forest, mistrust ran like an unspoken current between the characters, shaping their every move. Farooq trailed behind Precious, his thoughts heavy with doubt. He had sworn loyalty to her, but each decision she made only deepened his suspicions. Her obsession with power and the throne seemed to blur the lines of morality, and Farooq couldn't help but wonder he had allied himself with the wrong side. He cast a wary glance at her, unsure if the woman leading them had lost sight of everything they once stood for. "Are you sure about this?" Farooq's voice broke the silence, his question layered with more than just concern for their mission. Precious didn't look back, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. "We have no other choice, Farooq. You need to trust me." But trust was fragile, and Farooq's unease grew with every step. He wasn't the only one grappling with doubt. On the other side, Dyke's gaze lingered on Elizabeth, uncertainty etched into his face. Her recent revelation about her Apama lineage had shaken him to his core. Could he really trust her? After all, the Apama were enemies of his people, their very name tied to conflict and betrayal. Elizabeth sensed his hesitation and turned to face him, her eyes pleading for understanding. Not all of us are evil, Dyke. I'm using my powers for good, for the kingdom, for King David. You have to believe me. Dyke hesitated, torn between the bond they had formed and the deep-seated mistrust that now gnawed at him. Trust was the thread that held these fragile alliances together, but it was fraying fast. Every character, driven by their own motives, teetered on the edge of betrayal, and no one was certain who would stand with them in the end. The lines between friend and foe had never been so blurred, and with the throne at stake, each misstep could be fatal. In this treacherous game, loyalty was fleeting and betrayal seemed inevitable. The air crackled with tension as both groups hurtled toward the sacred shrine, knowing that whoever reached it first would determine the kingdom's fate. Precious, with Agatha by her side, moved swiftly, her eyes burning with ruthless determination. She had waited too long for this moment, and nothing, not even Elizabeth and Dyke, would stand in her way. Agatha's dark presence loomed beside her, silently calculating her own agenda hidden beneath layers of magic and manipulation. Precious believed they were unstoppable, but Farooq, following reluctantly, couldn't shake the growing dread that something far worse was at play. On the other side, Elizabeth and Dyke pushed through the thick mist of the Agba forest. Their breaths labored, knowing they were racing against time. Elizabeth's heritage as a descendant of the powerful Apama clan now seemed both a blessing and a curse, as she knew the weight of her lineage might be their only chance to stop Precious. Dyke's heart pounded, not just from the physical strain, but from the immense pressure of what lay ahead. The throne, King David's freedom, and the future of the entire kingdom rested on their ability to reach the shrine before their enemies. Each step brought them closer to the inevitable confrontation. The shrine, bathed in eerie light, stood like a looming specter of fate. Precious was prepared to seize the kingdom, even if it meant unleashing unimaginable devastation. But Elizabeth and Dyke were determined to prevent her from succeeding, knowing that failure could doom them all. Both sides were ready to risk everything, and as they approached the shrine, the impending showdown promised to decide the fate of not just the throne, but the future of all who lived under its shadow. Farooq was sitting on the couch, his attention fixed on his phone, when he noticed Precious standing by the window, whispering softly into her phone. Something about her behavior seemed off, her voice almost too low to hear, but there was an unsettling vibe in the air. Curious and concerned, Farooq asked, "Precious? Who are you talking to?" She froze in place, her whispering stopping abruptly, but she didn't turn around. The silence that followed felt heavy, and Farooq's frown deepened. "Precious?" he asked again, his voice firmer now. I asked, "Who are you talking to?" Instead of answering, Precious lowered her phone but still faced the window, her body stiff as though hiding something. In a low, almost chilling tone, she replied, "It's no one. You wouldn't understand." Farooq stood up, now more worried than curious. Her behavior was strange, unsettling. "What's going on? You're acting weird." "Just tell me," he insisted, trying to make sense of her odd demeanor. Finally, Precious turned to face him, but there was something unnerving about her expression, calm, almost too calm, and her eyes seemed distant, like she was looking through him rather than at him. With a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Some things are better left unsaid." The cryptic response only made Farooq more uneasy. "Precious, you're scaring me." "Who was on the phone?" he asked, taking a cautious step closer. Precious tilted her head slightly, her gaze now locked on his, but there was something unsettling about it, as if she knew something he didn't. A faint, eerie smile curled at the corner of her lips as she softly replied, I wasn't talking to anyone. You'd know if I was. Farooq stood there, confused and disturbed, the tension in the room growing thicker as the mystery of Precious's strange behavior lingered in the air, leaving him with more questions than answers. In the dimly lit interior of an abandoned warehouse, moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows across the cold concrete floor. At the center of the room, a magical circle glows faintly, inscribed with ominous symbols that pulse with a strange light. Precious stands at the heart of this circle, clutching a ceremonial dagger, her expression disturbingly calm and filled with cold determination. Suddenly, Farooq bursts through the door, breathless and wide-eyed, his gaze fixating on the surreal scene before him. Frozen in disbelief, he takes in the glowing circle and the dagger poised in Precious's hand. Desperation grips him as he pleads with her, "Precious, what are you doing? You can't be serious." Without breaking her trance, she raises the dagger and declares in a flat tone, "I offer Farooq's life to summon Agatha, the ancient sorceress. His blood will grant me the power I need." Horror washes over Farooq as he steps closer, his voice trembling with urgency. "You're offering my life. Precious, this isn't you. This is insane. Please don't do this. You don't have to." At last, Precious turns to him, her gaze unyielding and resolute, as if her decision has been etched in stone. "It's already decided, Farooq. This is the only way. Agatha will grant me everything I need: power, control, freedom. Your sacrifice is necessary." Farooq shakes his head, disbelief flooding his senses as he continues to implore her, his hands raised in a desperate gesture. "But why me? Why are you doing this? We can figure out another way. Please, Precious, you're better than this." A brief flicker of vulnerability crosses Precious's face, but it vanishes as quickly as it came. The light from the circle flickers around her, casting her in an otherworldly glow. "I can't afford weakness, Farooq. This is bigger than you and me. You'd never understand." With each word, Farooq's heart pounds harder, and he whispers softly, "Precious, I love you. Don't throw everything away for this. You'll regret it. You'll lose yourself." For a moment, it seems his words might reach her, but the flicker of emotion in her eyes quickly fades. Turning back to the glowing circle, she raises the dagger once more, her voice firm and final. "Goodbye, Farooq." Terror grips him as the light intensifies, the circle's power surging, drawing him closer to the inescapable fate she has chosen for them both. In the heart of an ancient forest, the air is thick with tension as the moon casts an eerie glow over the clearing, where Precious stands resolutely before a circle of flickering candles. Farooq, wide-eyed with fear and disbelief, watches helplessly as she prepares to invoke the ritual. "Precious, please," he implores, desperation lacing his voice. "This isn't the answer. You can't go through with this. Think of everything we've been through together." His heart races as he steps forward, his hands outstretched, pleading with her. Precious, however, remains unyielding, her eyes aflame with determination. "You don't understand, Farooq. This power is necessary for me to achieve my goals. I can't back down now. I've sacrificed too much." As she speaks, the ground around Farooq trembles, and thick roots suddenly erupt from the earth, ensnaring his legs and pulling him into the soil. Panic surges within him as he struggles against the vines, his breath quickening. "Precious, don't do this. You're better than this." But her gaze is fixed on the ritual, unshakable and cold. She raises the ceremonial dagger, glinting ominously in the dim light, and with a steady hand, plunges it into his side. "This is for greater power, Farooq," she declares, her voice devoid of remorse. "It's the only way to become unstoppable." Farooq gasps, pain coursing through him, Yet in that moment, he sees the flicker of doubt in her eyes. "You'll lose yourself, precious. This isn't who you are." He cries, but her expression hardens, drowning out his pleas as the ancient magic envelops them both in darkness, sealing their fates forever. As the shadows deepen around the mystical circle, a chilling wind sweeps through the clearing, heralding the arrival of Agatha, the ancient sorceress. She materializes in a swirl of shimmering mist, her presence commanding and ethereal. "Ah, precious," Agatha intones, her voice echoing with otherworldly power. "How admirable is your dedication to the dark arts." "You have done well." Precious beams with pride, her heart racing as she stands beside the towering figure, her resolve momentarily bolstered by Agatha's praise. But in the throes of agony, Farooq gasps, his breath shallow and labored, betrayal etched across his face. You've betrayed me, Precious," he croaks, his voice filled with despair. Precious, her expression a mixture of triumph and cold indifference, leans closer. "Oh, Farooq, you served your purpose well, but you were always just a pawn in my game." The realization crashes down on him like a wave, and as darkness begins to engulf his vision, he struggles to understand how the woman he loved could be so cruel. Meanwhile, far from the sinister scene, Elizabeth and Dyke navigate their own challenges at the Enchanted River, where the waters shimmer with enchantment and the air is thick with mystery. They face a mystical trial of the heart, each battling their inner demons that threaten to tear them apart. As the river flows around them, it reflects their fears, Elizabeth's anxiety about her worth, and Dyke's deep-seated doubts about his abilities. With every step they take, the whispers of their insecurities echo, threatening to drown them in despair. Yet, with determination and the strength of their bond, they confront their fears head-on, discovering that true courage lies in vulnerability and trust. As they emerge victorious from the trial, the river sparkles brightly, a sign that they are ready to face whatever darkness lies ahead, even if it leads them back to Precious and Farooq's fate. In the heart of the forest, beneath the towering ancient trees, the shrine of the sacred egg looms, its radiant surface pulsating with an otherworldly glow. Elizabeth and Dyke, exhausted yet resolute, arrive, their hearts heavy with the weight of their recent trials. But their moment of respite is shattered as Agatha and Precious emerge from the shadows, their eyes glinting with malevolence and intent. Agatha steps forward, her presence overwhelming. "You have something that belongs to me," she declares, her voice laced with dark power, her eyes fixed on the sacred egg. Precious, by her side, smirks with confidence, eager to unleash her newly acquired strength. "Join us, Elizabeth," Agatha offers, a wicked smile curling her lips. "Together, we can harness the egg's power and reshape the world." But Elizabeth stands firm, shaking her head defiantly. "I won't be part of your darkness, Agatha. This ends here." With her refusal hanging in the air, the tension ignites into chaos. Agatha and Precious unleash torrents of dark magic, swirling shadows and crackling energy erupting from their fingertips. Elizabeth and Dyke brace themselves, drawing on their newfound strength and the bond they share. They counter with desperate determination, dodging blasts of energy that sizzle through the air. As the battle escalates, the shrine trembles, the sacred egg glowing brighter, resonating with the fierce clash of wills. Elizabeth and Dyke fight valiantly, each strike fueled by their love and commitment to light against the encroaching darkness. With every spell cast and every movement, the two pairs embody the struggle between good and evil, their destinies intertwined in this pivotal moment. The forest echoes with the sounds of battle, the outcome uncertain as the power of the sacred egg hangs in the balance, awaiting the one who will ultimately prove worthy. The battle rages fiercely around the shrine of the sacred egg, vibrant spells colliding with bursts of dark energy, illuminating the forest in flashes of light and shadow. Just as Elizabeth and Dyke gain momentum, Precious, her eyes ablaze with malice, sees an opening. With a swift, calculated move, she lunges toward Dyke, brandishing a wickedly curved dagger glinting with a sinister green hue. Before he can react, the dagger pierces his side, the venom coursing through his veins like a dark tide. Dyke gasps, the pain radiating from the wound overwhelming him, and he stumbles back, his strength waning. The sudden shift in power sends a ripple through the battlefield. Elizabeth's heart sinks as she watches Dyke falter, his face pale and strained. Precious, reveling in her success, smirks triumphantly, knowing that she has turned the tide in their favor. "It's over, Elizabeth," she taunts, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Your precious knight is as good as dead." The atmosphere thickens with tension as Dyke struggles to stay upright, his vision blurring, yet the fire of defiance flickers in his eyes. Despite his weakening state, he meets Elizabeth's gaze, his spirit unbroken. "Fight, Elizabeth, for the egg," he whispers, his voice hoarse but filled with determination. Fueled by his words, Elizabeth steels herself against the despair threatening to engulf her. She channels her energy into a powerful spell, determined to protect Dyke and turn the tide once more. The battle continues, the stakes higher than ever, as Elizabeth fights not just for victory, but for the life of the one she loves, refusing to let darkness prevail. If you want part 8 of this story, please comment part 8 and also mention your country name. Your support gives us encouragement. Thank you for appreciating our hard work. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the bell notification so you can easily receive our upcoming videos.